Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hello, good morning everybody, how you doing? Wednesday, March 8th, 2017, International Women's Day, as we learned that I learned yesterday. I learned it the day before, but we learned that I learned it yesterday. And, well, let's see. The good news is the real answer on whether or not we're going to have Joan McCarter with us is yes. So this is fantastic. This is good news. Partially answers the question of what will the women of Daily Kos be doing with International Women's Day and a day without a woman. That was an interesting way of structuring the name of that event. Anyway, we'll try and cover all of those events, and you'll see coverage of those events on the front page of Daily Kos by women who actually know what they're talking about, which will be fantastic. I will try and avoid the subject, except to say I didn't think I did a particularly good job with it yesterday, and wandered off course, and, well, geez, I'm sorry about that. And, I don't know, the reaction wasn't terrible. But we made a couple of mistakes along the way. We meaning me, because I was all alone. We might as well take all of the blame. And we can, therefore, I think, move on from there. Certainly, if you missed your chance to criticize my performance yesterday, the door is open today. We're taking all criticism of yesterday's performance or any previous performance. Or if you would like to get on record now about today's or some future performance, I can't stop you. So the door's open, and the way to let us know, of course, easiest way to let us know, most instantaneous way to let us know, Twitter, using the KITM hashtag. That means a little number sign thing there in front, and then KITM for Kagro in the morning. I know we should be eliminating the T, but I don't know. KIM seems like, well, I don't know. It's no dumber than KITM. Anyway, Daily Kos Radio is live now. We learned this all the way from Portland, Maine, thanks to Bill up there in Portland, Maine. Kagro X, David Waldman, that's me. The tweet says, I support Women's Day. I'll believe it. It says, I'm doing it by wearing my hand-knitted pussy hat headphones. I wish I had a pair. I could use a new pair of headphones. Things are falling apart here at Kagro in the Morning World Headquarters, but we manage. Anyway, Greg Dworkin is on hand early this morning. For the record, everyone is wearing red, I assume. You can't tell, but might as well just say so. And I'm not leaving the house anyway, so no one's going to be able to catch me. Good morning, Greg.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm okay. I don't see any women around, but that's usually the case.
Yeah. It's one of those days, I suppose, right?
Yes.
And we'll see how that goes. You know, today's discussion, honestly, is going to be mostly about healthcare. That
is true, and women
it can't help
that.
But be with everything that happened yesterday.
Yeah, well, just don't try to help me with that. I warn you, it won't help you. I can tell you that.
Oh well, I do have to remind people though, because Women's Day, that there was this famous Donald Trump quote when he was didn't know that he was being recorded. I can't repeat it entirely on the air; it's a little too earthy. But it says, let's just remind people that Donald Trump tweeted out something about it's great that it's International Women's Day. It's a wonderful thing. But on the other hand, when he thought he was not being recorded, he said, I did try and screw her, except he didn't say that. He was more earthy. And he said, well, she was married.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
don't
his
want
view.
that mattered to him, apparently, but okay.
Let's just be clear that that's his view.
Yes. Well, that is his view. I tried out his statement. He did make I guess he took a couple stabs at making Women's Day statements. I think the most anodyne of which was I have tremendous respect for women and the many roles that are vital to the fabric that they serve, that are vital to the fabric of our society and our economy.
Yeah. Well,
so
how about this tweet?
See whether you believe it.
International Women's Day, join me in honoring the critical role of women here in America and around the world.
Right.
And then remember what he said when he was getting taped and he didn't know he was getting taped. So let's just leave it at that.
Yes. Interesting, too, that he made sure to mention roles in both of those tweets. That's going to be an interesting analysis too, except, I don't know, you don't need to get that.
Except I won't make it. Let's talk about healthcare.
Yes, okay, good. Yes, fantastic. Let's go. Hurry. Let's run.
As soon as possible. So here's the thing.
Where is
After 6 years of dithering, or 7, or however many it is,
okay.
after who knows how many repeal Obamacare, the dog finally catches the car, and what happens?
So far, nothing.
Nothing. You have this release of the American Health Care Act yesterday. And, well, let's just look at Jonathan Chait, for example. He says, Trump Care is the culmination of all the GOP's healthcare lies. He says the Republican Party in its modern incarnation is incapable of writing a decent healthcare bill, if we define decent to mean both some level of technical competence as well as moral decency. Just to make that point, Paul Ryan was asked if it matters that 10 million people could lose their health insurance.
Oh. What did he think?
He said, what matters is we're lowering costs.
Oh.
In other words, as Michael Cohen points out, he does not care if 10 million people lose coverage. Maybe it's more than that. It's hard to tell because it hasn't been scored by the CBO yet. And in fact, they're going to try to push the bill before that even happens. They're going to mark it up and they're going to try to go with it and try to pass it as quickly as possible. And, you know, it's just a remarkable thing. What does the bill actually do? John will give us the details. But if you want to look broad brush, it essentially tries to repeal Medicaid, which is why Paul Ryan likes it so much.
But that takes care of people.
Yeah, well, so what?
Oh.
There was an analysis from the CBPP, the Committee on Budget Policy Priorities. Medicaid cost shifts in the House GOP bill would total an estimated $370 billion over 10 years and grow over time. Essentially what you do, and this is an old trick, you're well familiar with this, is that you say, listen, instead of the federal government paying for this, why don't we just turn it over to the states and give them block grants?
Oh, yeah.
And the block grants will be less than what we're paying now, but will give the states flexibility to do things that they don't have now, which will make it even better for the states. For example, they can say, okay, we're going to freeze the number of people who get to be on Medicaid at current levels, or even lower it. So not only do we have less money to pay for all of this stuff, but rather than stick that on the states, we'll just make it so that nobody is eligible for it. We still have it. Nobody can claim that we got rid of it. It's just that, you know, nobody qualifies.
Oh.
Kind of like Texas.
Yeah, all right. So, decreasing access.
Decreasing access and decreasing coverage.
And yet...
Cheaper, and that's all that matters. Oh, by the way, we'll also throw in an incredibly secret tax break for a lot of people who are very wealthy. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll call it the let's pay for a 1% tax on the 1%ers. Let's pay for a 1% tax decrease by getting rid of Medicaid bill.
That seems like a fair trade if you are very
wealthy. The Unaffordable Trump Doesn't Care Act.
Oh, well, that was always true.
Right? So, yeah, it was always true. It was always true about the Republican Party, getting back to Jonathan Chait. So, when Republicans, he says, quickly discovered repealing Obamacare without a replacement was wildly unpopular, polling under 20%, they had to change strategies. So they believed they could grab one of the many conservative plans floating around Washington, patch a few of them together, and this wasn't working, so they figured there's one way out of the trap. Conservative healthcare wonks wanted to eliminate or cap the tax deduction for employer-sponsored health insurance, also known as ESI, if you see that abbreviation.
Employer-sponsored insurance, is that okay?
That means you get it at work. This would be a mechanism that could pass philosophical muster among the keepers of the Reaganite flame and potentially raising the hundreds of billions of dollars needed to finance coverage in any Republican plan. But as the conservative analyst Christopher Jacobs, and by the way, all the conservatives hated this yesterday, as he explained yesterday, when Republicans modeled out the efforts at capping the tax deduction, turns out it had a deadly result. Reducing the tax incentive for employer-sponsored insurance would cause businesses to dump more people out of their employer-sponsored insurance.
Oh.
So now you have all these people with jobs who don't have insurance.
Well.
And they're tossed off their plans. So not only is it a fiscal disaster, it's a political disaster.
Well, you know, people didn't really want insurance anyway.
Right. So, but that's not the end of the problem. But, so now they have all of this stuff, so what do? Well, they put together this plan that really only pays for it by getting rid of Medicaid. And why did they do that? Jonathan Bernstein has a really good answer to this. Oh. He says the Republican health care bill isn't really designed to work. That's not its purpose and that's not its function.
Okay.
To summarize, it's all about Paul Ryan. So Paul Ryan has this fractious Freedom Caucus that won't cooperate, help get rid of Boehner. And Ryan has to do something. If he doesn't get a bill together, if he doesn't even produce a bill, they're going to tear him apart with 1,000 cuts. If he does produce a bill and it doesn't pass in the House, he can blame the Freedom Caucus. If he does get a bill together and it passes the House, that would be his best strategy, because then when it doesn't pass, he can blame the Senate. And as you know, House people love to blame the Senate for their own failings.
Yes.
It's like a thing.
Easy to do. It's fun. They hate the Senate until they're running for it.
Right. And so that's what you have here. And so Ryan can say, it's not our fault. Look at those guys in the Senate. You know, Susan Collins wouldn't vote for it. Blame her. Leave me alone. So he keeps his job. And so the way that Jonathan Bernstein put it, if Ryan hadn't come up with any bill at all, he and the rest of the leadership and the committee chairs would have been the obvious target for conservative media to attack for breaking the party's pledge on health care. Mm-hmm. Producing a bill, any bill, helps him avoid that, except it really doesn't. Even Drudge is going after it, which we'll talk about in a minute. He'll be in even better shape, Jonathan Bernstein says, if he convinces his conference to pass something, no matter how many doubts they have. If he manages that, and by the way, it's not clear that he will, then he'll be well on his way to placing all the blame for the bill's demise on the Senate. But even if it fails to pass the House, he's no worse off than he was without a bill. And that appears to be his logic, and it may well be the best choice from where he sits right now. So you step back and say, well, how do key players react to this? I got a nice roundup here from a place called The Consumerist. Key players give their opinions for and against on Obamacare replacement. Handful of people in the House who say it's fine. Tom Price thinks it's good. Blue Cross Blue Shield is okay with it because they're going to get a windfall out of it. But in opposition, we have Justin Amash, Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, Mike Lee, Rand Paul, Rob Portman, Shelley Moore Capito from West Virginia, Senator Cory Gardner from Colorado, Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. We have, of course, Democrat politicians and think tanks and pundits, and this is interesting because the people who are opposing it include Americans for Prosperity, Freedom Partners, Heritage Action, Club for Growth. I mean, that's pretty interesting. Freedom Works. So you have a whole bunch of conservative groups, including, big headlines on Drudge and Breitbart.
True.
Who are
Yes.
opposing this. Now, why would they, in addition to like real players like AARP, ACLU, Consumers Union, American Nurses Association,
American
Hospital Association.
I understand this morning.
What's that?
AMA, I understand this morning. I saw a tweet fly by. I'll have to dig up the actual reference there.
Which is not surprising. They got so much crap for supporting Price in the first place. So, you have all the what do medical people know? You have all the medical people who are against it. You have the conservatives who are against it. You have the liberals who are against it. You have Democrats who are against it. You have half the Republicans who are against it. It ain't going to pass.
I will remind you.
But what it does do is it allows Ryan to say, okay, I did something.
True. I will remind you that was the same coalition that opposed the sequester. Yeah. But we have that.
Yeah. Well, Trump is going to try, and here's the weird part is it's kind of understandable if you look at it just from Ryan's point of view and the House point of view.
Yes.
But the weird part is trying to look at it from the White House point of view. What the heck are they up to?
I don't know.
Because Donald Trump says, this is my bill, I love it, it's great. Which was really stupid because from a political point of view, he should have said, well, let's see how it works, and then I'll weigh in when I see whether it's going up or going down. And if it goes down, I can say, this is not my heart, this is not my soul, this is not my bill. And no wonder it went down, it isn't me. Instead of that, he wedded himself to it so that when it goes down, it's actually going to take away some of his mojo.
Yes.
I don't understand that part. The other part I'm sort of trying to figure out is, why did Breitbart say they hate it?
I don't know.
This Bannon, Steve Bannon, who used to be from Breitbart and still has pretty good close ties, is that him in the White House saying this is a great way to screw Ryan. Let's make him take the fall for all of this. We can't do it anyway. Nobody can really pass health care reform. We know that. It's so difficult. It was amazing Obamacare got done in the first place, and we know we can't repeal it. And if it's going to go down, why don't we make Paul Ryan the fall guy?
Yeah, I don't know. That could be the strategy. I was wondering why he wouldn't maybe tell the president that strategy. So I'm a little confused as to what they're doing, except that it may just be that they're, anarchist nihilists after all. So who knows? But I'm sure he has nothing whatsoever to do with it because he's totally separate from them and living in their offices.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and now they say,
awkward night.
Yeah, there are people, in fact, that are people. There are conservatives who are saying the only way this is going to pass is if you get Democratic votes.
Yes,
well, that's not going to happen.
Right. Well, that's the old plan.
Yeah.
The way things used to work in the House. So everybody, all you Democrats, go help them out.
Right. So again, you step back and you say, I don't completely, totally get what everybody is up to here. It's a terrible rollout. It makes them look awful. It makes it look like they can't govern, which we knew.
Yes.
But why do you want to make it obvious to everybody else? It's the old, be quiet and be thought a fool is better than open your mouth and remove all doubt.
Yes. Well, that's what they say, but, they're not listening.
Yeah.
So they can say it all they want. It won't make a difference. I don't know. I'm not sure what's driving them, if anything's driving them. This is just another one of those stories where you might have to file that under, these guys might not be evil geniuses.
They might not. New York Times, speaking of not evil geniuses, New York Times has one of those Trump voters are now upset that Trump is doing what he said he was going to do stories.
Yes, well, we do need to reach out and understand.
Right. Millions risk losing health insurance, a Republican plan, analysts say. Martha Brawley of Monroe, North Carolina, said she voted for President Trump in the hope he could make insurance more affordable. But on Tuesday, Ms. Brawley, 55, who, by the way, had never voted before now, was feeling increasingly nervous based on what she had heard about the new plan. I'm scared, I'll tell you that right now, to think about not having insurance at my age, she said, because she's got issues. If I didn't have insurance, these doctors wouldn't see me. Right. Well, that is unfortunately often the case, depending upon what kind of expensive procedures you need, and she needed some fairly expensive ones from the story. And unfortunately, it doesn't say, so I'm not going to support him now. It doesn't say, I am going to support him. It's like, he really just threw me a curveball. He blindsided me. I didn't expect this. And my reaction to the story is, great, now what? What are you going to do about the fact that he lied to you and you are a mark?
Well, I'm sad that she feels lied to and she's losing her insurance, but he is shaking things up.
He is.
And I want it to change.
Okay, so you can compare it side by side with the Affordable Care Act if you want. Maybe John will do that for us. But the fact that Club for Growth, Heritage Action, Koch brothers network all oppose it means it's not going anywhere.
Okay. Well,
LOL GOP points out we're about 9 hours away from Trump accusing Obama of sabotaging the GOP's repeal bill.
Yeah, I don't know if we have to wait that long. I wonder, well, today is the first markup in the Ways and Means Committee. I don't know whether Trump abandoned ship today because I don't know if he knows what that means, a markup in the Ways and Means Committee. But I guess if it makes the news, I guess that's how you'll do it. If you see on Fox News that the bill is terrible, then you know that he knows it's over.
Right. Let's see. Matthew Iglesias says, this is so amateur hour. Workshop the bill with conservative groups before releasing it. What is happening here? And you have to really try and figure out what's going on. Let me read you some headlines just from all of this. Ian Millhiser over at Think Progress. 6 terrible ideas included in the House GOP's health bill. These guys have no clue what they're doing. Avik Roy, conservative in Forbes. House GOP's Obamacare replacement will make coverage unaffordable for millions. Otherwise, it's great. Philip Klein, conservative in Washington Examiner. Republican Obamacare plan signals that liberalism has already won. And what he means by that is that even this Ryan bill keeps the framework of trying to cover people and not shifting absolutely everything over to the private market. In other words, imagine Social Security, and now everybody in the world has the equivalent of healthcare savings accounts for Social Security and gets the government out of it altogether. That's the conservative vision for what happens with healthcare, and this didn't go there. And so, therefore, it's a liberal plan just tweaked in a way to make it more palatable to conservatives. Because Obamacare is here to stay and you can't get rid of it. I mean, that's basically the theme of his article, and he's right.
Oh. Well, there we go.
Right? Conservatives pan GOP Obamacare replacement plan as welfare, exactly for the reasons that I said. It doesn't get rid of everything. And here's another one from Ryan Lizard. By the way, all of these pieces are from the Pundit Roundup from today. Paul Ryan's healthcare vice. Forced to navigate House Republican politics to lobbying pressure from the insurance industry, obscure rules of the budgeting process. And by the way, the insurance industry lobbying and other stuff from big players are mostly invisible, even with what the AARP and the AMA saying publicly in regard to where they're at, and the American Hospital Association privately. The screws are really going to be turned, which is why this bill is not going to go anywhere in its current form. And the obscure rules of the budgeting process, Ryan has produced a bill that nobody would ever propose as a sane solution to the problems with Obamacare. Its only chance is speed. If Ryan can rush and muscle it through the House, and Mitch McConnell can do the same in the Senate, by the way, he can't, it might end up on Trump's desk, but the more scrutiny this House bill is subject to, the more likely it is to share the fate of most efforts at healthcare reform and die somewhere on its journey to the Senate. And perhaps long before then, if his healthcare reform effort fails, Ryan himself may not survive as the House leader. So Jonathan Bernstein sees that as his best play, and Ryan Lizard is saying even his best play may not be enough. Meadows and colleagues catapulted Ryan to the speakership, and they still have the power to bring him down. In other words, if they lose the support of the Freedom Caucus, then what?
Then,
I mean, this is always going to come back to you because everybody's going to say, okay, another year, another session. Now how do we get rid of the speaker? I think every 4 months we ask that question of you.
Yes. Well, yeah, and I noticed that there's a lot of coverage of John Boehner in retirement, happily mowing his lawn and drinking wine and saying, good luck, losers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. Good news for him, anyway.
Now, here's an article from Axios. That was the new startup with Jim Vandehei and Mike Allen, which is actually interesting because everything they publish is really short.
That's how you win the morning.
Yeah, exactly. So 5 things that Guy Cecil and Priorities USA.
But we're only going to tell you 3 because that's how we're going to win.
It's abbreviated, right? So Priorities USA, and which is a Hillary Clinton-style group, the group spent more than $35 million on digital in 2016, and they're applying lessons learned to a new digital outfit. They're in the early stages, and details are light. But here's what they're planning. 1.
All right.
Daily, consistent, and long-term digital communications with 2 groups. 2012 voters who didn't vote in 2016, who should be for Democrats.
Okay.
And the second group is Obama-Trump voters. That is to say, they voted for Obama in 2012 and then Trump in 2016.
All right. So they're going to reach out and understand. Or something.
And they're going to spend some bucks on it, too.
All right. Where will those bucks stop?
Well, not just in the Midwest, but in places like the exurbs of Florida, where Clinton's performance was lower than Trump's. And they're going to try to target those people who switched and get them to switch back. The second thing they're going to do is build a digital voter file. And the third thing they're going to do is converting anti-Trump protesters into registered voters, which is always good. Don't just protest, register to vote.
Sure.
Fourth one is reaching out to regretful Trump voters. Does this sound familiar? And telling them when the president fails them. We will use peer-to-peer applications that leverage users' social networks to share content organically and experiment with content delivery to break through silos and find new solutions for reaching audiences. I love that one. It was written by a consultant.
Yeah. Anytime somebody says, well, what I'm going to do is...
It sounds all good because it's got all these buzzwords in it.
What I'm going to do is, my plan is, at 10 p.m., I'm going to share something organically.
Yeah, basically, I'm going to tweet to them until they come around.
Yeah.
That's my strategy, and they're not paying me any
Right.
money to do it. But I just do it online all the time.
We should just do
And
something
then 5,
viral.
hiring different creative folks to communicate with Obama-Trump voters. People that have experience communicating with voters in the building trades. It's not the same 10 folks or same 100 folks that are moving from campaign to campaign who have all the experience in the world of communicating with millennials or communicating with Democratic base voters, but don't speak the language that those voters want to speak. So hire some union people, okay? Good idea. You should have done that a long time ago.
Well, we'll see if it works.
Yeah, we'll see if it works. Anyway, that's their plans. And so the idea is to take lessons learned and apply them, but I just thought it was interesting that they haven't
that's a good
forgotten
idea.
the reluctant Trump voter. Apparently there's going to be a lot more of them as soon as they figure out that, they lost their health care.
Okay.
And for all of the, well, I don't know if I should really approach them, and I don't know how well that's going to work, and so on and so forth. If you're going to take 10 million people off of the insurance roll, and it may fail, so that doesn't happen. But if you're going to threaten to, or if that's your plan, or if you're going to back it, or if you're going to say, I am for the plan that gets rid of your insurance, then you have a ripe target to at least talk to.
You do.
You already haven't insulted them and shamed them.
Well, I don't know.
I just thought I'd throw that in.
Yes, they may think that they've already been insulted. I don't know whether they'll be able to tell the difference between who insulted and shamed them and who didn't.
Right.
Very paranoid.
Keith, yeah, they are, but there's a key thing there is because when they bring that up, or how Hillary needed to go to jail because she obviously broke the law, even though nobody charged her with anything. It's important to say we're moving on from the election. It's got nothing to do with that. This is 2017. We're talking about what's going on now, and it's your health care now, and focus on that now. And don't do the tu quoque logical fallacy of bringing up some unimportant, has nothing to do with it thing to change the subject, right? You can't get your health insurance back. If we're talking about your health insurance and what's going to happen to your health insurance right now, and that Donald Trump is talking about in terms of your health insurance, as well as what Paul Ryan is talking about your health insurance, if you bring up, in 1999, some other Democrat said this, therefore it's the same. It's this year, dude, and it's your health insurance. Let's get back to that. That's the focus. So that's, I think, an important discussion tool to just keep in mind when we go forward with this. It's all of a piece, and I think that a lot of the stuff that we talked about earlier wasn't ripe yet because the Republicans weren't threatening 10 million people going to have less health insurance than they did before. And all those voters who thought that Trump wasn't going to do what he said, or thought that he promised that he was going to make this better, but it turns out he isn't, are going to be, ripe for talking to, because those are the persuadable voters that you might be able to reach. The true believers who say, yeah, this is what I wanted all along because he said so, and it's a cult, forget about them. It's a waste of time even talking to them. Just block them.
Yes. Well, good luck. I hope it all goes organically very well for you.
Yeah, I got a whole bunch of buzzwords here I can also use. Let's see if we're going to be in the political consulting business. I have to use peer-to-peer applications. I've got to leverage users' social networks.
Yes.
I have to share
Across
content
multiple
organically.
platforms.
I wonder if it's free range.
Yes,
Sure.
and artisanal as well. Locally sourced across multiple platforms. Something. I think Linux should probably be in there somewhere.
Right. Oh, don't forget about content delivery and silos.
Oh, yes.
And you also need new solutions for reaching audiences.
Yes, you do. And I think I'm out of buzzwords on most of that, but we'll come up with something by the end of the
One
show.
sentence. I thought that was really, really well done.
It was terrific.
It was awesome.
It was organic.
It was. And so, it's grassroots, it's bottom up, it's all the things that you need. So, bottom line is there's stuff happening here. It's not making Republicans look good. And I think that there's a lot of openings to do something with it. So we shall see what happens. That's the story for today, just because of what happened yesterday. And no, it's not a distraction from the main story, which is, of course, this Russian thing, which keeps going on and on and on. We had this hearing for the next in command at the Justice Department, because it won't be Sessions doing this. So the question that was brought up at the hearing was, all right, Mr. Second in Command, whatever your name is, are we going to put a special prosecutor in place? And I think the answer was the Department of Justice is perfectly capable of doing independent work. And I think everybody laughed, and then by the time they finished laughing, the hearing was over.
Yeah. There was an opportunity for Al Franken to get very angry. I saw a
He
bit
did?
of video of that. Yep. He wants Sessions to come back and answer more questions. I think that's a great way to start. I don't know who's going to say no to it. I mean, the chairman. I will see whether he can get his Republicans to line up with that.
Right. This is Rod J. Rosenstein, who's the
Yes.
Deputy Attorney General nominee. And somewhere, I don't know whether it was during the hearing or after, Franken gave his opinion that he thought that Jeff Sessions committed perjury.
Yeah. It's about time he came around to that. And he was very, very careful in doing that. He could have said that day one.
Yeah.
But he let it percolate for a little while and took temperatures and tested the wind as he should have. You know, you're going to make an accusation like that. You want people to be with you on that. And it's not hard to be with you, but it takes some time. So, yeah, I'm glad he finally came around to that conclusion. And it's going to be uncomfortable for Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee to see that conclusion drawn and say, yeah, but we might as well not ask him about it. Because, you know, it was just perjury to our faces. And after all, who cares?
Right. I think the two pieces of information that came out yesterday on this Russia stuff, again, it's drip, drip, drip a little bit more every day.
Yes, what's Russian today?
Is that confirmation that Corey Lewandowski was the campaign manager or associated with the campaign at the time, was the one who sent Carter Page to Russia to talk to people, so it was a campaign-sponsored thing. And the other part was that apparently Trump did in 2016 meet with Kislyak, who was the Russian ambassador, after Trump said he didn't.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of fun.
Now, none of it is proof, and Brendan Nyhan, political scientist, keeps saying it's all circumstantial. There is no proof. There may never be proof. There may never be anything in here when you drill down to prove that there was collusion, which is what Democrats would love to see happen. And we don't know that that's in fact the case. But the fact that they keep denying all of these things that happened and try to avoid it and get more and more frantic about circling the wagons and protecting Trump from, you know, any further discussion or probe is in and of itself damaging whatever happens there. So that's the status of that. So we have those two story arcs, and I just don't want to lose track of either one. We have the healthcare one, which may be a defensive Ryan position rather than an offensive trying to get this thing passed position. And we have the Russian Trump connection, which is still playing out and has a lot more to play.
Yeah. It was an interesting day for the Russia thing. It was kind of quiet, but yeah, those are two important points. As I understand it, during the campaign, Carter Page, well, both he and Lewandowski at some point attempted to disassociate from the campaign, but it never really worked. But Page says that his trip to Russia happened after he had separated from the campaign, but as it turns out, he sought explicit permission. He said, I realize this could be bad for the campaign. I'm asking permission to go to Russia. Permission was granted, which is not something he would have needed if he was separated from the campaign. So,
Right,
pretty
absolutely. So before I leave, two things I just want to throw in there. Michael Musson throws this out on Twitter, which he's quite right about. He says, don't forget the top-down, planned and structured, spontaneous, grassroots, organized activities.
Grass tops, even.
Yeah, we have to do that.
There's that one.
And there was this other thing I saw, which was just fun. We've talked about this on the show some years ago, which reminds me that I've been on the show for some years. Yeah. But the New York Times had an interactive graphic up, and it was kind of fun. What you do is you answer specific questions about how you pronounce things.
Oh, right.
And then it tells you where you're from.
Yes, I remember that one.
Right? So they had another one today.
Okay.
And that's because somebody published it from December 21st, 2013. It's probably the one that we did, several years ago. But somebody popped it up again, and I just thought it was great. So I took it again.
Yeah.
And, for example, the first question is, how would you address a group of two or more people? You all, use guys, you lot, you-uns, yins, you, other, y'all, all y'all, how you do this. And you answer these questions, and you take 25 of them, and then it tells you where you're at, where you're from. And I did it.
Okay.
And it tells me I'm from Yonkers, New York.
And are you?
That's where I grew up.
There you go.
So I just thought it was fascinating there. And I think if you took it, it'd probably tell you were from New Jersey.
Probably.
So I sent it to you just in case you want to have fun with it on the show or off the show or later. And I also sent you a picture of the map of the United States. You can see it on your Skype list there. It's kind of bluish except for the red. And if you actually open it up and look at it, you'll see that it says Yonkers, New York.
All right, let's see. Is this the one? Just checking.
How y'all use and you guys talk.
Yeah. All right.
What does the way you speak say about where you're from? Answer all the questions below to see your personal dialect
There
map.
you are. Okay, I see your map. Okay.
And what city is highlighted there? New York, Yonkers?
And Newark and Patterson as
Right.
well.
All quite near each other.
Yes. It's a pretty small area.
But it was great.
Well done. Does it look like it's possible that you look at that? It's interesting. You have a small chance of being Louisianan, apparently, as well.
Yeah, tiny chance.
Also, I like the little see if you can figure out why is there some chance that you might also be from the far southeastern tip of Florida.
Yeah, possibly, because that's where all the New Yorkers went out and moved.
They retired to there. Yeah, that's where they went.
Right? So it's entirely possible. What you should do is you should take the quiz on the air and tell us about the individual questions and then see where you're at.
Yes, or where other people are at. They can all take the quiz and tweet me their answers.
Right, exactly right. So with that, I'll leave you. This is Greg Dworkin speaking with my very good friend David Waldman Kagro in the morning. A little bit more structured show maybe than we had on Monday, but I thought it was good. I think that's just important to keep an eye on those two story arcs, the healthcare piece and the Russia piece, because that's what's going to be dominating the news next couple of days anyway.
Yes, I think so.
Joan will be on.
Yep.
Say hi.
Okay.
Take care. And I will talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Let's do that.
Okay.
Thanks
Take
very
care.
much, Greg. You do the same. And let's move on from there. Let's see. The other, the other bit of the Russia story that I found interesting anyway was the old life comes at you fast issue. I think that's what we mentioned here. Trump having, as it turns out, he also met the Russian ambassador and also doesn't remember it. It's an epidemic. Everybody's forgetting their meetings with the Russian ambassador. But and there's nothing terribly wrong with that. It's just that it lines up funny. Just how long ago was it? When did he tweet this? A couple of days ago that Donald Trump, remember when he was mocking the idea that there needed to be an investigation simply because members of his campaign and later administration were meeting with Russians. And so therefore he said, remember when he had so much trouble with the hereby thing? I hereby demand a second investigation after Schumer of Pelosi for her close ties to Russia and lying about it. What was the lie? The lie was she said she never met the Russian ambassador. And yet, here was a picture showing Nancy Pelosi sitting at a table on the opposite side from a Russian ambassador, although not, I don't think it's Kislyak, unless he gained a tremendous amount of weight between then and now, or maybe that's not who's directly across the table from her. Maybe that's it. That might be him over there. Anyway, to tweet that she had lied because she had not remembered meeting him. Well, okay, that's fine if that's the standard we want to set. On the other hand, now we have to juxtapose that with the story. The one I grabbed was the one reported by, I think it was Huffington Post. Donald Trump met Russian ambassador during the campaign, despite repeated denials, which, as Donald Trump would have it, is lying about it. But hey, when other people do it, it's terrible. When I do it, something, successful businessman, everybody forget about it. Okay, let's see. Greg has tweeted us a couple of things under the hashtag. It's like putting up the bat signal, so we have to take a look at that one. Let's see, passing on the tweet from Christina Wilkie, HHS Secretary Tom Price saying, Medicaid is a program that by and large has decreased people's access to care. This is insane. And she's right, it is insane. And then another from a tweet this time from Alex Eisenstadt from Politico. Just now, inside the House GOP conference meeting, Paul Ryan tells the group, the president has completely and fully endorsed this plan, according to a source inside the room. And so, good, fantastic. Lash him to the mast as the ship goes down. All right. Well, he probably doesn't. I don't know whether he recognizes the political import of any of this. I don't know whether he understands how any of this stuff works or what any of this looks like. He just figures if he does it, it's awesome, and that's all there is to it. I don't know. Lots going on. Let's see. What else can we explore from today's headlines, tweets, maybe some from the other day? Let's say another one of these blanks from the Washington Post. How does this, why does this come out this way? I think if I park things in Pocket from Twitter on my healthcare plan, the phone that I carry, it doesn't come out quite right in Pocket. Oh, let's see, another thing here he sends me. Bloomberg Politics FBI Director James Comey has been asked to testify in the House panel's Russia-Trump probe. I don't see how you could have possibly gotten around that one, so not a surprise, but it's news nonetheless. So we'll put that on the record. Okay, I see what this one is here. I should resave this to Pocket from my laptop, and so this time I think that means it will tell me what the headline is up front. Okay, so let's see. What did we not get to yesterday, and what do we need to get to before we talk to Joan? Although it would be fine to talk to Joan about this stuff too. So no problem, Joan. Whenever you are ready, you can come by. Never worry about the timing. That's what I say. I mean, I say that right now anyway. Let's see. Here. An accidental call from Greg. Greg butt dialed me and hung up. Okay, what did I want to get to? One thing I wanted to mention yesterday, just sort of put it on the record, another observation from Mark Sumner over at Daily Kos, just to put the numbers out there. Donald Trump spends 31% of his time in office so far on vacation. He has played golf 8 times in 6 weeks, all on the taxpayer dime. I don't know if that needs any additional clarification, but what I found interesting was he made a citation to, I guess they must have done a segment on this on MSNBC somewhere. Maybe, I don't know whether it was on the Maddow show, but it certainly sounds like the sort of thing they'd cover. Trump supporters are dumbfounded by this. They cannot believe that this is happening or that Trump is actually taking more vacation and playing golf more often than Barack Obama. They refuse to believe it. It's not that they're shocked by the reality of it. They just simply say, that's not true. That's fake news. As Mark put it at Daily Kos, Donald Trump is that guy. The guy who treats the company credit card like it's his personal mint and who buys the most expensive item on the menu because he knows someone else is picking up the bill. So, who's paying for Trump's extravagance? Of course, you are. So am I. We all are together. Over the last 5 weekends, according to MSNBC, as I recall, let me just scroll over it and make sure that's the right. Yeah, Rachel Maddow show, too. Over the last 5 weekends, the president has visited his luxury resort 4 times. Each trip costs taxpayers about $3 million, and as of last night, Trump had spent 31% of his presidency at Mar-a-Lago. He's now played golf 8 times since taking office 6 weeks ago. Despite being president on 9/11 and starting the 2 longest-running wars in American history, George W. Bush, who also loved golf, found time to break the record for the amount of vacation time taken as a president. Even so, Republican mythology insists that President Obama was a golf-obsessed loafer whose jaunts around the world cost taxpayers a fortune. In truth, Obama was never close to matching the lazy days, or ways for that matter, of W, and both of them were nose to the grindstone compared to Trump. Here, the grab from MSNBC, the quote says, told that Donald Trump is actually spending more on travel and enjoying more downtime, conservatives were incredulous. The facts, quote, can't possibly be right, unquote. One said, that absolutely can't be right. So, there you go. Oh, it's right, they say. And it's one of the clearest signs of just how blatantly Donald Trump is willing to lie, not just to America, but specifically to the people who supported him. Trump during the campaign, I'll just say it this way. Well, let's see. We have a screen grab here that Brad Jaffe put together that has he's doubled these up. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 tweets included in this particular roundup of Trump complaining about how often Obama played golf. At the current rate, though, while Trump is spending your money to cover his amazing laziness, he'll easily set a record, and he loves records. George W. Bush finished off with 65 vacation trips, totaling 407 days off. 3 times as much as Barack Obama, but Bush still only spent 14% of his presidency snoozing, brush clearing, and learning to paint feet. Trump is easily set to eclipse Bush's 8-year total in his first term, assuming he completes that first term. Okay. Well, we got that. And let's see. Gil Aquino, who I found out the other day had taken a short break, a recess, if you will, long enough that we could have done some recess appointments for his position, as it turns out, from the show, but returning and says, seems you accept Russian interference. What convinced you? I'm still not entirely convinced that the interference rose to the level that, we would, let's say, frankly, we would all prefer to find out that that was the case if it resulted in ejecting Trump from office, although it would certainly be bad news for the United States in general if that were the case. And I'm still relatively uncomfortable with just sort of laying everything at the feet of the Russians. But I am becoming more convinced that there's some weird thing that the Trump team is insistent on hiding because I am watching them hide it. That's really, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just that they thought that the mention of Russia would freak everybody out, and maybe now they figured out that it either doesn't, or maybe they're afraid that it still does. I don't know. I'm really not sure why they're hiding what would otherwise be perfectly normal in some cases, or at least justifiable meetings with a Russian ambassador. But they keep saying they haven't had them, and they keep turning out to have had them. And I don't know. Now you got to find out, well, what is going on here? And maybe it is that it's not the crime, it's the cover-up. That's been the case in the past in American politics. Why you would say I never met the Russian ambassador, if asked directly, that I can understand. You might not remember meeting the Russian ambassador. Why you would go out of your way to say you never met the Russian ambassador when somebody asks you a totally different question? What time is it? What would you like to have for lunch? Are you free today? Well, I was thinking about Chipotle, and I never met the Russian ambassador. Why would you say that? It's crazy. It's insane. I don't know why you're saying that. I didn't say that. You said that. You met the Russian ambassador. That's probably what happened. You're covering for yourself. Okay, don't get nervous. I just wanted to know if you wanted to go out to lunch. And between that and I didn't go on a trip to Moscow, and if I did, I wasn't part of the campaign. Well, you were explicitly dispatched there by the campaign with their permission. I don't know. What is it that they're hiding? I'm no more convinced than I was at in the immediate aftermath of the election that it was hacking into voting machines and changing the numbers such that a Hillary Clinton victory was electronically changed into a Donald Trump victory by Russians. Although I do have questions about why people keep hiding the fact that they were talking to another major power in the world. I think that we probably ought to be talking to Russians fairly frequently, but between that and then just the weird coincidences that linger on the periphery, things like people changing their minds about the threat that Russia poses, things like weird changes to the Republican Party platform that don't make any particular sense. There's really nothing else that concerned Donald Trump besides Ukraine policy. That seems unlikely. And I did see this morning a tweet storm that purports to explain that Jeff Sessions himself made a rather incredible about face. So I don't know, maybe stepping back and being away from the show for a couple of months gave you a better perspective. It may be that things have changed more than I realized, but I guess it's a good time to try to reset here, too. I'm still not super comfortable saying, oh, my God, the Russians did it all. But I am, I'm certainly concerned with the the possibility that the Attorney General came to the Judiciary Committee and lied to them about his contacts, just because lying to the committee is a bad thing, no matter what you're lying about. It's not necessarily the crime, it's the cover-up part of the story. There's that, and then of course, I do believe, I am convinced, and I think I had been convinced prior to the election, that Donald Trump's particular affinity for Russians and things Russian, though it might not necessarily be an attachment to the government of Russia or officialdom in Russia, it is inextricably linked with the oligarchy of Russia, of course, and that means the money of Russia. And I don't think I changed or had to change positions on that one. I think I've always been pretty convinced that Donald Trump basically laundered money for Russian mobsters, and that was his major source of income for a long time. And he's comfortable with Russians because the ones he knows give him lots of money and demand next to nothing from him. And that's a different understanding of Russia and Russians than the rest of us have, because Russians hardly ever give the rest of us money. And maybe if they did, we would all feel better about them. Of course, maybe if they did and we felt better about them, we would make lousy presidents and guardians of the American national interest. Anyway, so let's see. A couple of other fun things that were in pocket here. By the way, one of the revelations from the other day has to do with Boris Epstein, whose name comes up from time to time on the show, too. And I know that Greg recognizes the name. It turns out he's the subject of a piece in Politico here titled, "White House Official Terrorizes Network Green Rooms." Boris Epstein, who pushes Trump's message out on the airwaves, has offended network bookers and contributors across Washington. Annie Carney writes for Politico. Basics of the story here. White House official Boris Epstein, a combative Trump loyalist tasked with plugging the president's message on television, threatened earlier this year to pull all West Wing officials from appearing on Fox News after a tense appearance on anchor Bill Hemmer's show. Well, if you didn't read the article, can you guess how that threat went over at Fox News? Did they panic? Well, I guess to their credit, no, they did not. Epstein, according to multiple sources familiar with the exchange, got in a yelling match with a Fox News booker after Hemmer pressed him for details of President Donald Trump's controversial executive order cracking down on immigration from Muslim-majority countries, a topic he was not expecting to be grilled on. Oh, that's terrible. And this is how he pushes back. Am I someone you want to make angry? Ooh, do you know who I am? Epstein told the booker. The sources said, when he threatened to pull White House officials from the network, the fed-up booker had had enough. Go right ahead. The booker fired back, the sources said, aware that Epstein had no power to follow through on that threat that would have upended the administration's relationship with a sympathetic news network, and maybe the only one left. Ultimately, White House officials have continued to appear on Fox News, and the network told Politico that it handled the flare-up professionally. Just sort of an interesting entry in the continuing saga of Boris Epstein. And there's much more to the article, just by way of background and what he's up to and the things he's doing and the ways in which he's a particular jerk, which I'll probably hold on to. And, maybe we'll go over them on a different day. But this is not the best use of our time in between Greg and Joan, but I just thought I'd throw it out there just to make sure that you know that his name is still in play. Also, interesting piece here from the Washington Post, sort of playing off of what we pointed out yesterday in the new lobbying in the actual lobby game. Big Candy is lobbying the Trump administration. It's also holding events at Trump hotels. That reported, if we can open things up quickly here, by Amy Britton and Jonathan O'Connell, letting us know that the National Confectioners Association has been doing a lot of business with President Trump's company and is going to have a major convention gathering going on at the Trump National Doral Resort near Miami. Of course, this was booked many years ago, as a matter of fact, well before the election, of course. But now you can expect to see, as we discussed yesterday, a flood of organizations looking to book their events at Trump properties. Just the opposite of what really ought to be going on, but it's awfully hard to boycott trade associations. You know, how do you boycott all candy? I don't know if that's going to work. They may have us over a barrel on that one. America's addicted to sugar. But I just thought I'd throw it out there. You're probably going to see more and more of that. And I think a lot of use of charity there, too, as we discussed yesterday, to book charity balls and other functions at Trump places. And you know, he just can't keep his nose out of those things. He loves to drop in on those folks. Let's see. What I'll hold for discussion with Joan is some of the fun stuff, like discussion by the guys over at Vox. And by the guys over at Vox, I mean the women over at Vox. And I mean a particular one, Sarah Cliff, pointing out that the House Republican health care-ish kind of bill likely to run into all sorts of political problems, not the least of which is whether or not they can hammer it into shape for reconciliation use, so that they can avoid the filibuster over there. And it's looking like on several points they're going to run into some serious roadblocks, but perhaps we'll save that one. That would be a good thing, I think, to discuss with Joan, unless she wants to take us in a different direction, in which case I'll explain it all to you at some later date. Let's see. Other fun things that we ought to have on the record. Let's see. We've got lots of good stuff about Sebastian Gorka being a complete idiot. That'll be good for another day. Here's a quick item, one I thought that it would be interesting to have on record, and love to hear your thoughts on this one from North Carolina. North Carolina, like a number of other states around the country, sort of using their Republican legislatures, where they understand even less about the implications of proposed legislation. Most of their proposed legislation is revenge material. What do I hate? I want to get rid of. Let's do something like that. And if you're looking for ridiculous proposals that are facially violative, or we can just say facially are violations of almost all constitutional rights across the board, the state legislatures are the place to look. Lots of part-timers there, lots of people who, I think just because there's less attention on it generally, you more often, and also, of course, there are more people serving in the state legislatures because there are so many of them than the federal legislature. And but you tend to see people proposing things that are outlandish. North Carolina, like a lot of states, has been looking to crack down on protest, and has just, some states have just been blatantly ridiculous about it and saying, why don't we outlaw protests? Well, First Amendment, etc. Well, okay, I don't mean good protests like from patriots. I mean bad protests from hippies and black people and Muslims and stuff like that. Obviously, that's ridiculous. You can't do that. You don't understand. The First Amendment applies to everyone. And they say, no, it shouldn't. And anyway, I got 20 of my kind of people here, and you only have 10 of your kind of people, so we should do it. Happening all over the country. No surprise. Certainly anybody who's witnessed Alec's ability to distribute legislative ideas like that won't be surprised about it. Anyway, the one from North Carolina I thought was, I guess, particularly creative in its stupidity. Economic terrorism is worrying them there in North Carolina. This headline says, economic terrorism bill would toughen penalties on protesters who block roads and damage property. If you block the roads, people can't get to work or shopping or voting for Republicans or whatever they might be on their way to do. And that's, okay, it's not terrorism in blow up airplanes kind of thing like we see on the movies, but it's economic terrorism is how they're labeling it. Of course, I would like to see it labeled economic terrorism when you use the power of the state legislature to try to deprive people of their voting rights. Well, now, wow, wait a minute. Now, that's not economic terrorism, besides which we're just trying to make sure that there isn't any cheating going on, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I know all the excuses, but if people can't get redress for their grievances, and they may be economic grievances, after all, at the voting booth, then what are they going to be doing with their time? They're probably going to find other outlets, as opposed to simply surrendering to you, which I'm sure you would like to mandate as well. Anyway, I just thought this was interesting. This in the Charlotte News and Observer by Colin Campbell. Dateline Raleigh, of course, that's the capital. Protesters who damage property, and that's not so good, or block traffic. Although, by the way, what does it even mean to damage property? Well, you're stepping all over my sidewalk, and now I'll have to wash it. Some people claim things as dumb as that. And then, of course, there's straight up damage, broken windows, etc. But blocking traffic, too. You can now face tougher penalties under a criminal offense called economic terrorism, proposed last week in North Carolina's legislature. The bill from several North Carolina House Republicans comes months after Charlotte faced weeks of protests following the shooting by police of Keith Lamont Scott. While most of the protesters were peaceful, some broke windows, looted stores, and shut down Interstate 85 and 277. Representative John Torbett, a Gaston County Republican, is the primary sponsor of the bill. He says drivers who came upon protesters in Charlotte highways last fall feared for their lives. And his bill would add a little bit more of a deterrent by heightening awareness and adding a penalty. They feared for their lives, and I'm going to heighten awareness, he says. I think he already recognizes he's on shaky ground. The first core responsibility of government, he says, is the safety and security of its citizens, and this will assist in that effort. Of course, allowing people to vote would also help in securing and finding safety and security for its citizens. They would have a voice and an ability to affect their own lives, but never mind that part. When we say safety and security, we mean for people who vote for us. North Carolina is one of 17 states where Republican lawmakers have filed bills addressing recent protests, according to the New York Times. Some of the proposals are similar to Torbett's legislation. If Torbett's bill passes, people who block roads while participating in a riot or other unlawful assembly would face Class A1 misdemeanor charges, the misdemeanor category with the longest sentences for jail, probation, or community service. Illegally blocking roads for any other reason would remain a Class 2 misdemeanor. So remember, if you block a road, tell them it's for the other reason. All right. It goes on, of course, and there's plenty more and good background, but it's pretty interesting what people are proposing these days. Let's see. We also have a note in here that says that, like, in Iowa, they had a state Senate bill that would make blocking roads a felony punishable by up to 5 years in prison, one step beyond. They're weak on road blocking in North Carolina. In Minnesota, a state house bill would allow cities to sue protesters for the cost of police response. Well, don't respond then. I think that's an interesting proposal. So from torts class, I would say, well, you had the ability to mitigate your damages there. You didn't have to respond. We were a peaceful protest. You sent out riot police. That's a waste of time, but and a waste of money, but that was on you, not me. We were peaceful and we didn't do anything. Of course, they would claim you were only peaceful because we were there, but you'd have to prove that. I think you should be able to make a counterclaim against that one, that they abandoned their responsibility to mitigate their damages. Let's see. So it's one of many states, as they point out here. Somewhere in the pocket, I bet I have another thing. There was another unrelated sort of bill, just only related in terms of really stupid ideas from state legislators. I love the way I had to say that one. The stupid idea is in the legislature, but it comes from legislators. I don't know if I definitely put this one aside, but I know off the top of my head, I can tell you that the idea was essentially to have some kind of political litmus test and force professors and other faculty members, I guess, at state colleges and universities to disclose their political affiliations with the idea in mind that hiring would have to be from both sides in relatively equal numbers, because colleges and universities are hotbeds of liberal, radical something or other. I don't know, whatever. I don't know what they think is going on college campuses, but they think the students are listening to the professors, which is hilarious, and indoctrinating them in who knows what. I imagine they have them all reading Saul Alinsky's book. Somebody must be reading it. I don't know anybody who's doing it, and that must mean it's happening on a college campus somewhere. But their idea was that if there were too many Democrats on a faculty, well then, basic fairness dictated that some of these jobs, the new jobs that open up there, would have to go to Republicans just to keep things fair and even and relatively awesome, I guess. I thought they were against hiring quotas, most Republicans, but I guess when you find out that the jobs could go to Republicans that you know who are looking for a sweet gig, maybe with tenure that pays plenty, then they get a lot more comfortable with quotas after all. I'll have to dig that one up, or at least write a note to myself to dig that one up, and I'll put Scott on notice to tell me you got to go back and dig that one up and give me a link for that one. I can't find it very quickly. I'm sure it's just buried under, the dozens of other stories that have developed since. All right. Well, 10:07, so we're well into the 10 o'clock hour. Doors open for you, Joan, whenever you like. No rush, of course, and I have plenty that we can go through just to keep ourselves occupied. I did mention to you that there was weird happenings on the Russia front that brought the subject back to mind that I haven't cited yet, and I'll tell you what it was. I got pointed to a tweet storm from Tim Mack, M-A-K, the Daily Beast senior correspondent, that put together an interesting Russia conspiracy theory type thing that has a little bit to do with guns and with a name that got called the other day. And as you know, I like to follow up on these stories when we find something new that I think is going to make its way into larger circulation traditional media. We like to raise your awareness of it beforehand. Here's the story. He starts out with this tweet. Hey, folks, Tim says, let me tell you a story about the National Rifle Association's delegation to Moscow in December of 2015. And he's got an article on it, and it's linked herein, but let's just read the tweet storm here because that goes nice and quick. Keep in mind, he says, that the NRA spent $30 million to support Trump's White House bid, more even than Trump's super PACs, and was its strongest outside ally. And we need to be reminded of that from time to time. Of all the nefarious players in all of this, don't lose sight of the NRA. There we go. I think Kate Cheryl has got the article we need here. The Iowa Republican, it was, who wants universities to ask prospective professors, how would you vote? Thanks very much. That from the Washington Post. I don't know if that's the one I had originally, but that definitely covers the right subject. Thanks, Kate. Let's see. The story about the NRA, though. In December 2015, an NRA delegation met in Moscow with Putin Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Rogozin, who was a target of U.S. sanctions. Rogozin was targeted for U.S. sanctions in 2014 after the Russian annexation of Crimea. Even in Russia, he's a radical voice. What kind of radical do you need to be in Russia to stand out? Rogozin believes Alaska is part of Russia, for example. Look out, Alaskans. You can see home from your home. And he's also a big proponent of cyber warfare. Yay, I'm for cyber warfare. So why is the NRA meeting with him? Because they're for regular gun warfare, and they thought it might be interesting, I guess. David Keene, former NRA president and current board member, was on the trip. He says they met to talk about a Russian shooting club. Sure, why not? But weirdly, the NRA opposed U.S. sanctions against Russia in 2014 after it turned out Like that, I mean, it does make sense, right? But it is a weird thing for them to intervene on. Like the NRA, remember, we were all supposed to be armed to repel Russian invasion. But of course, we no longer believe in Russian invasion, so somebody else. But anyway, traditionally, we've wanted to repel Russian invasion. But okay, maybe there is a reason for it. They didn't like it because the sanctions, it turns out, would halt importation of certain Russian firearms. You want a genuine Russian AK-47 instead of building one yourself here in the United States, like Donald Trump wants you to do? That is weird, isn't it? Anyway, if you wanted to do that, well, no go because sanctions. These are the same sanctions that targeted Rogozin for Russia's destabilization actions in Ukraine. Then Tim continues, did I mention the NRA delegation was in Moscow while General Mike Flynn was there dining with Putin? Weird coincidence. Maybe it is just that, right? You never know. Let's see. Meeting with Rogozin, of course, he says, is not illegal, but folks are sanctioned because they are targeted as American adversaries. It seems curious to meet with an American enemy whose sanctions you have objected to and talk about a rifle club. Yeah, I guess so. Here's how the NRA responded to the U.S. sanctions against Russia when it affected the import of the Russian rifles. Apparently their statement, reads, or the coverage, his coverage in the Daily Beast of their statement goes this way. Rogozin's inclusion in U.S. sanctions prior to his meeting with the NRA delegation marks him as an American adversary, but if that designation raised red flags to Keane and his compatriots, including board member Pete Brownell, top NRA donor Joe Gregory, and Trump supporter Sheriff David Clark, he didn't mention them before or since. The White House designated Rogozin for sanctions through an executive order in March 2014 after the Russian annexation of Crimea and Ukraine. Perhaps it's only coincidence then that a few months later the NRA's Institute for Legislative Action protested when the Treasury Department banned the importation of Kalashnikov firearms under authority granted to them for that same executive order. The latest sanctions will no doubt engender the idea among some that the Treasury Department is using a geopolitical crisis as a convenient excuse to advance the president's domestic anti-gun agenda, the NRA-ILA wrote at the time. So that was their take on these. Oh, we're sanctioning Russians as a backdoor gun control measure. Really? Okay. I mean, you can make your own AKs, but never mind that. The NRA delegation's trip to Moscow is raising eyebrows among House Intel Committee members that are investigating Russia. And here another screen grab from his piece, quoting Representative Mike Quigley, saying that it's disconcerting that they would be meeting with this guy. But Tim Mack continues, let's talk about who paid for the NRA delegation to visit Moscow. Most members would not answer questions about who paid, but thankfully there is a member of the delegation who was forced to file public disclosure. That was David Clark, sheriff of Milwaukee County, Wisconsin. Yes, that David Clark with the big hat and everything. Here he is in Russia during that 2015 visit in December. Great time to visit Russia, by the way, if you feel like going off season. It's nice and cold. Here his own tweet with his own, he had somebody else take the picture. It's not a selfie. Red Square near the Kremlin with a Russian officer. Met earlier with Russian foreign minister who spoke on the Middle East. That's exactly what they were probably talking about. Clark's disclosure forms say his trip was partially paid for by a Russian group called the Right to Bear Arms. Does that ring a bell at all? Well, let's see. It should. We talked about it the other day. Why? That's the firearms organization led by Maria Butina. Remember that name? The Russian national who lives in D.C. that Tim just profiled, and I believe it was probably his profile that we read, right? Butina is a Siberian furniture store owner, remember that, who showed up in D.C. as a grad student in the fall of 2016. She was in the U.S. another time, though, when she showed up in Las Vegas in 2015 asking Trump about Russian sanctions at a public event. Butina's background: a gun rights advocate, a Russian central bank staffer, and furniture store owner, and now a student in D.C. mingling with D.C. conservative elites. Oh, and she worked for Alexander Torshin, former Russian senator from Putin's party, who's still close to him. Torshin was accused by Spanish authorities of helping the Russian mob launder money, and that's where things get real interesting. He's a money launderer, like somebody else, I suspect. So the NRA's trip was at least partly funded by a Russian organization with what was charitably described as sketchy roots. The NRA went in big for Trump, spending $30.2 million, more than twice what it spent to support Romney. Payoff starting to show in the lead ammo regulations, right? We just saw those reversed. It's not a huge thing, but it was on their agenda. Are conservative circles in D.C. starting to shift their views on Russia? One case study, David Keene, the former NRA president. Keene was also a member of that delegation, of course. In 2014, Keene was writing a column slamming Obama with regard to Putin, saying he was content to insult Mr. Putin by claiming he runs a second-rate country. In 2017, though, he says, we're taking the Russian threat too seriously. Putin's Russia, which has with its second-rate military and failing economy, is what Keene was. So he was upset about insulting the Russians, although that does seem backwards chronologically. But plenty more where that came from. No end to this tweet storm. As far as, there it is. I can actually see one labeled "End Tweet Storm." What do you know? At any rate, when asked about the apparent contradiction, Keene replied that the two statements aren't inconsistent. Now, does that prove anything? No. It's just more of this crazy smoke about for which we can find no source. No one will tell us anything about why the NRA, of all people, making trips over to Moscow, presumably, I don't know what, to preach the gospel of the Second Amendment to people who don't have any amendments at all. But but also, I guess, to keep the pipeline of genuine Russian Kalashnikov rifles flowing. Even though, as I said, the patriotic thing to do, if there's a patriotic way to get yourself a Russian rifle, it's to build it yourself. That's why we're for manufacturing here in this country. Aren't we, Joan? Good morning, Joan. How are you?
Good morning, Kagro. Absolutely.
Yes.
So I'm assuming they're trying to sell memberships in Russia?
I don't know. Maybe that would be a good idea. I mean,
they've kind of maxed out here, haven't they?
You would think, although you get them more or less for free now when you buy guns. But I'm sure that would be a big hit just in terms of the camp value of it over in Russia. They love American things, and the NRA is about as American, I'm sure in their minds, as it gets. Delivering the guns to them, that's probably a bigger issue, and I'll bet Putin wouldn't like that. That should be the next thing. The NRA should say, can we hand out guns here in Moscow? Can we just, like candy, distribute them to whoever wants them? And I bet their relationship would come to an end pretty quickly. But, that's just speculation. Anyway, how are you? And what are you watching today? What's on TV, Joan? Tweet about TV to us like the president does.
I should have a whole conversation with you on Twitter every morning.
Yes. Why not?
Darn. It's International Women's Day. It's a day without women, and there's too much happening in the world for this woman to be recognizing it. So,
well, the point
it's sort of a funny thing. Marcos said,
mm-hmm.
How do you strike against a boss who tells you can go on strike?
That's
You
it's
can't.
disappointing, right? That does, that is an issue. Our dedication to progressive causes sometimes falls under question if we're not doing what is, whatever has been defined as the progressive issue of the day. And sometimes that designation is one we agree with. But yeah, that's like, for instance, people say, well, why is there no Daily Kos Writers Union? Now, I'm not actually an employee of Daily Kos, so that I would not qualify for the union anyway. But yeah, that does come up from time to time. But I think you've pretty much encapsulated it there. All right, well, we're going on strike. Okay, I support you. Oh.
Yeah.
How are we going to end this strike?
Really working for Marcos, there's nothing to strike for. This organization is fantastic to work for.
Maybe what you should do, you should unionize and then strike every once in a while, and you'd win all your strikes, and then you'd be like, see, not only are we unionized, we actually have the best, most effective union in the country. The rest of you are slacking. We win every strike.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's still an ongoing conversation for us. Because, we want to be in solidarity with all of the other political writers out there in the world.
Yeah. It's, it's just one of those weird situations. You go out, you form your own organization, and then, I don't know, well, what are we going to strike about it? I mean, most of any grievances that come up get resolved through not necessarily, I guess, collective bargaining so much as, it's collective in that everybody was there and they bargained.
Right.
So now what?
But, there's another part of this on striking, which is that it's kind of a privileged thing to do. And we are in complete solidarity with all of the women who are striking today.
Yes.
We're in solidarity with the women who can't afford to strike today.
Yeah.
And that's most of them.
Right. That's true. I mean, I guess it doesn't really do a whole lot. What are you risking if you strike at an organization that says, yeah, go ahead?
Right.
So.
Nothing. And there's so many women who, on a daily basis, the whole progressive infrastructure is fighting for their health care, for their equal pay. So it's an interesting position to be in, but, we most of us fell on the side of not taking Marcos up on his offer for us to strike.
Well, I think that makes sense too. I mean, the idea was, I guess, to take yourself out of the workaday situation where you just, you do your bit contributing to economic activity. But
by
you want to
not
take a step
contributing
back.
to economic activity. I saw that you had a little bit of a gaffe on the shopping thing yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not spending money today.
Yeah, that's the point. Was what I meant there was that my wife had said, "Oh, and it's not like you can take the day off and do what you want and go shop. If you like to go shopping, you could take off and do that, because the point was to, zero out as much as possible your economic activity for the day, and that would be the economic activity that I would otherwise normally engage in, and I don't want to do that because that's not being in solidarity, so what am I going to do? All right, well, something else. But yeah, no, it wasn't supposed to be, if they're not working, then they're obviously shopping.
Right.
That's wrong. We don't want to say that. And I didn't mean to, but I think I did. So that's wrong.
That's wrong. And, just another opportunity for you to clear that up.
Yeah. Well, why not embarrass myself a little bit?
But, and here's the thing. Women take a day off. What do they end up doing? Cleaning house, getting groceries,
sometimes.
All of the stuff that they otherwise have to cram into a weekend.
Yeah. But
there are rallies happening in some places.
Yes. So if there is one around you, you can do that instead. That's great. And the point is, I think, to just sort of absent yourself from the regular workaday routine. Now, of course, if your job is discussing the implications of that, then I guess it's all right to show up. It's just, if your job is, I don't know, supporting the operations at something that either I mean, certainly if it's anti-woman in some way, you don't want to be doing the job at all. But if it's just regular routine work that doesn't have any particular political import, I suppose that's what you want to be shying away from. And if you have the ability to take the day off, you probably like to be spending it doing what you're doing, discussing the politics of the issue.
Absolutely. And by the way, I am going to be wearing red today, so.
There you go. All right. And my younger son asked for a red shirt today when he heard about this whole thing, too. Although he was mostly interested in the fact that the nearby school system had shut down.
Yes. Yes. Prince George's?
It was, they closed too. We were thinking of Alexandria. But
Oh, Alexandria, yeah.
Yeah, that was the first one I heard about. But did Prince George also?
Chapel Hill.
Okay. It's quite a few.
Yeah. A preschool in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Schools
interesting.
are going to be hit hard.
Yeah, well, the students won't mind that. That's a good way to raise student solidarity.
Mm-hmm.
They love the idea. So, you're stuck, though, but you chose.
I chose. I'm not stuck. I am here writing about keeping everybody's health care.
Yeah, so we've been talking about that a little bit.
And here we go again with the Freedom Caucus. Preventing something horrible from happening, potentially.
At least they're consistent.
Yes, they are.
Hate everything.
Yes, they are. What were we joking about yesterday?
Oh.
David Neer came up with this.
Oh?
Because debt ceiling is probably coming up middle of the month. Yay! Oh, that's a week from now, by the way.
Oh?
Oh?
Wow.
The Ides of March come with a debt ceiling increase.
Okay.
That the GOP can threaten to hold the GOP hostage over Obamacare. They'll vote for the debt ceiling increase.
That will be interesting.
Yes.
All right. I thought this was a good opportunity. Maybe he'll do it anyway for Trump to mint the coin, but then take it and take it home with him. Fly it to Mar-a-Lago and put it away. I minted the platinum $1 trillion coin, and I minted 2. One for me, one for you.
And then we'd have to go on a hunt for where he decided to hang his platinum $1 trillion coin.
Yeah, where did he put it? Like a Horcrux.
Yeah.
Let's see. Greg was talking a little bit. Obviously, he was going to hit on the healthcare issues too, and but it's going to be, I guess, a fast-moving vehicle.
They're going into markup right now.
Yeah, although it may hit
in a half hour or so in both Ways and Means and Energy and Commerce.
Okay.
They are going into it without a CBO score, Congressional Budget Office, which clearly you can do.
Sure, go ahead.
But is pretty unusual, particularly on a bill that you're trying to put through in reconciliation.
Yes, that's also problematic. Does it mean that though that they will eventually? Are they just they don't have it yet, or have they even requested it? They haven't prevented CBO.
I don't know that they've requested it yet. I mean, the CBO, it's out there for them. They can grab it and do it. But I think they specifically wanted to have these markups done in committee before the score was released. I think Ryan would really like to try to have it on the floor before there's a score, which isn't going to work at this point because Paul Ryan and Mike Pence and I don't know who are the only people who are actually supporting it. Greg covered this better early, or covered it quite well earlier today. I'm sorry. I haven't had enough coffee. My brain's going all over the place. The Freedom Caucus is opposed to it.
What do they want?
They want repeal. Just repeal. They don't care about replacement.
Okay.
They just want repeal. They want, we talk about clean debt ceiling, clean CRs all the time. They want clean repeal.
Okay.
And of course, if that happens, all the other Republicans know that they will block any kind of replacement of the bill. So the rest of the Republicans don't want that to happen because it would be disastrous for them. The only people who can politically afford straight across repeal are Freedom Caucus members, people who are in such gerrymandered districts that they don't have to worry about losing their jobs. All the other Republicans, including most of the Senate Republicans, that's not going to work for them. So how the numbers on this work out for Ryan, I don't know. Freedom Caucus and all of the Koch-backed groups have come out against it. Breitbart has come out against it.
Yes.
And how that works, I don't know.
I am unsure, and I don't even know whether
is this Steve Bannon screwing with Priebus and Paul Ryan?
I don't know. I mean,
it could
maybe. I can't even figure out why. But yeah, and nobody knows, and no one can put their finger on it because no one knows what his relationship is with Breitbart. When they need for there to be distance, they say, he resigned. And when they need to prove that he resigned because there's an actual, process that requires proof, they, as far as I know, refuse to provide that proof. So, I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of it. And I still don't know whether he lives in the same house where the Breitbart offices are. That's going to be, that would have been an awkward night too, right? Or maybe it's an awkward morning this morning to come back to work. And I understand Ryan told the Republican conference this morning the president totally endorses the bill.
Right.
And Breitbart doesn't.
Doesn't. And according to Mick Mulvaney, according to what the Freedom Caucus says, Mick Mulvaney, the former Freedom Caucus member and current director of management and budget, he's on their side. This is all up for negotiation. They say he told them.
Okay. I don't even know what that means. The president said that too, that, this is just a negotiation, but
But Paul Ryan says, no, the president's on our side.
Huh.
And Tom Price says, kind of both. And Mike Pence says, kind of both. We're here with you, Paul Ryan, supporting you all the way, but this is just the beginning of a process of negotiation. Oh, and Trump also dropped the bomb yesterday that this is going to be a 3-phase process.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So Paul Ryan's going to be doing healthcare for the rest of his tenure, which might not be that long.
That's possible too. It's going to be real. I guess they could spend literally all their time trying to work this thing out. Now,
they've spent a lot of the past 7 years. Doing repeal votes. So.
I guess that's true. So it's not, but I guess I'm thinking in terms of like, will anything else? Well, are there any other? Maybe there are no other pieces of the Trump agenda. I don't know. I mean, there's the wall thing, but
tax reform.
Oh, is that going to be all right? I thought they were just going to say no more taxes.
This is kind of interesting too. I don't know how this works. Somebody has convinced Trump that there is a process reason, a parliamentary reason, a congressional reason why they have to do Obamacare repeal and what they're calling replacement before they can do tax reform.
Okay.
He keeps saying this, and nobody knows why, because clearly that's not how it actually works.
That might not be. It might not be real, I guess.
So is this Paul Ryan snowing Trump, saying we have to do this? I have no idea.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I can't think of
what the end goal would be in that.
I don't know. I guess we'd have to know more about what they thought they were going to do or what they thought tax reform meant to see if there wasn't some possible explanation. But then again, that's a trick that gets used all the time. My recollection of how the Affordable Care Act passed the first time, there was the Kent Conrad position that they couldn't possibly pass. The House was asking for the reconciliation bill to make changes and to pass the reconciliation bill first, and then if they got the changes that they wanted to the Senate bill parked in place, they would then go ahead and pass the Senate bill. And Kent Conrad insisted you can't pass a reconciliation bill that reconciles another bill that hasn't yet been enacted.
Right.
But that's not actually against the rules. He just thought it made more logical sense. But it's the sort of thing that if the chairman of the Senate Budget Committee says it, everybody figures it must be one of those things I don't understand.
Right.
So we'll do it that way.
Sure, we'll go along with that.
Yeah. So, maybe it's just something that maybe this is the one benefit available to Paul Ryan for all those years of insisting that he was a budget wonk. Well, he's smart, so I must not understand what he's talking about. So we'll just do it his way.
I think that's it primarily.
Okay. Well, that would explain it.
Ryan wants to get this done.
Yes.
As fast as he can. Whether it's because he doesn't think that he's going to have Trump around to rubber stamp it. I don't know why. I don't know why this is such a huge rush. Clearly he feels a lot of pressure from his caucus to make good on the repeal promise.
Yeah.
But the problem is he can't just repeal. Mm-hmm. And here's his chance, too, to do his other favorite two things, block grant Medicaid and defund Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
Which are both in this bill.
Right. Speaking of which, at least one of them shows up in the Vox article about the various obstacles that reconciliation poses for this bill.
Yes. And you are the process guy, so you're the one to talk about that most intelligently.
Oh.
But there are a couple of things in there that could be a problem.
Yes. Well, they will. Okay, yeah. So I can we can have a larger discussion of that, and they'll remain a problem tomorrow. So we can certainly touch on those things. But Sarah Cliff has this piece that let's see, what does she identify? I don't know, 3 or 4 different particular provisions. But for everyone's edification, the surcharge for people who don't maintain continuous coverage, interesting mechanism that they came up with, which is the individual mandate redirected.
And how that affects the budget is a good question, because you're not paying the surcharge in terms of a fine levied by the IRS. You're paying it to a corporation.
Yes. That probably gets at the heart of why some of that part of the Affordable Care Act was designed that way. Everybody hated the idea of the individual mandate, and then there was a big fight over whether or not you call it a penalty, but it's really a tax, and you should just be upfront about it. And even the courts insisted on that, but then it didn't change the legal status of it. Okay, fine, it's a tax. Oh, well, now that makes me mad. Of course it's a tax. The reason it's a tax is because if we just said that the penalty for not having insurance and then going out and shopping for insurance when you suddenly fall ill is you have to pay insurance companies directly additional money at whatever rate they say, and in this case 30% premiums hike. I don't know for how long you have to pay that, but I'm sure that's spelled out. But to use reconciliation, which limits your legislative language to that which directly affects the federal budget, to mandate that you send money to somebody else, not the federal treasury, it's going to fall outside of the Byrd rule, and you're not going to be able to use reconciliation. So one of the
unless you keep firing parliamentarians until you get one that says, okay, you can do it.
Right. There is that, and Sarah's article does note there is a sort of nuclear option here. You can just say the parliamentarian either is fired until we get one that says the right thing, or we just don't listen to her and we overrule her. But that's I think the main sticking point. There's also apparently a provision in there that allows insurers to charge the oldest enrollees up to 5 times more than they charge young, healthy people.
Right.
And that, too, again, doesn't affect the Treasury because the money doesn't go to the Treasury. It's not government tyranny. It's someone else's tyranny, so we can't help you with reconciliation.
And by the way, not at all popular with older people.
Oddly,
who
no.
tend to vote Republican.
Yeah, I think they'll find that weird. But I don't know. Maybe they won't find out about it if they don't say it on Fox.
Yeah, I don't think if they only watch Fox, they will find out about it.
Well, let it be a surprise to them. Old people love surprises.
Yes, they do.
You should jump out and tell them their premiums went up and see what happens. Also, defunding of Planned Parenthood, not entirely clear how you get that past reconciliation. That doesn't, although, not funding something could conceivably help the bottom line of the budget by saying, well, now we're not spending that money. That's not necessarily the case and the money not spent on Planned Parenthood might just end up getting spent elsewhere in the Medicaid program. And I guess in order to get to the end result of a net positive for the budget, you have to say that this is actually, we're going to kill this amount in Medicaid funding, because that's where the bulk of the funding to Planned Parenthood comes from. So you'd have to cut Medicare and Medicaid to do that, and that's not super popular either, although Ryan likes that idea, certainly.
Well, they could argue that that money would be redirected to community health centers, or to, they're going to supposedly restore some funding. This is a complicated part of it that goes back to the very beginning of the bill when Medicaid expansion was going to be universal. They cut funding to emergency hospitals, basically a lot of rural hospitals and hospitals that take a majority of emergency visits in communities. They cut that funding because everybody was going to have Medicaid, and everybody, you were going to get reimbursed for care through Medicaid, so you didn't need that special infusion of federal money to cover costs of indigent care. So for hospitals in the states that did not take Medicaid expansion, after the Supreme Court said that was the one part of Obamacare they would overrule, a lot of these hospitals have been struggling because they were losing that special reimbursement from the government. And of course, a Republican Congress wasn't going to give that back to the Obama administration. So this has been a huge problem in a lot of rural states in particular. The Republicans say now they're going to give some of that money back. So that could be coming from Planned Parenthood Medicaid funding. And also they keep saying, well, we're going to give more money to community health centers because community health centers can take on all of these Medicaid patients that Planned Parenthood cannot now see. Except the community health centers say, no, we can't. We're already full up. We already have too many patients. We can't take on all of this. Republicans have, of course, ignored that argument from community health centers, and they're going to say probably that, this money will help. So that's where the money's probably going to go, according to Republicans.
Okay. Well, it's an argument that they can make, certainly.
So this one on the parliamentarian side, on the bird bath side, I'm not sure of. But I do think the Democrats should fight it.
Yes, absolutely. If nothing else than to eat up the hour or so that they spend doing it. There's a lot of fights that they should be having and losing just for the sake of having them.
Yes. And I don't know how this would affect, I don't know, I haven't looked to see if the exclusion of Planned Parenthood in Medicaid funding goes back and tries to rewrite actual Medicaid law, which says you can't discriminate against a single provider.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't think it does.
It doesn't.
So they've got an issue there.
Okay. Yeah. That does pose an additional problem. I don't think I even remembered that. But actually, I see it here as well, noted that that creates a specific issue as well. It's not that you're cutting Medicaid across the board. It's that all you're doing really, the reason that the change, it says here, the argument could be that the change in spending is just incidental to the effort to cut out one specific Medicaid provider.
Which is prohibited by the law authorizing Medicaid.
Yes. Okay, now I gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow, all right.
So there's a problem I don't know that they've hit upon.
Well, yeah, some more reading to do. Hooray.
Hooray!
That's how you learn these things, diving into them. All right. Well, that gives you some idea of the obstacles that they will either have to overcome or bulldoze at some point when the Senate gets this thing handed to them. And I'm not certain how long it's going to take do that.
And as of yesterday, Mitch McConnell was not going to be willing to deal with any of those issues. He said, let's just take this immediately to the floor. As soon as the House passes it, I'm putting it on the Senate floor.
Huh.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of that.
I don't either. I don't think it's going to go over well with his conference.
No. Yeah, I wonder whether that's my first impression there is that he is saying, that he's going to that I imagine he would let the parliamentarian rule and then just say, hey man, the House sent me a lemon.
That's what it sounds like.
I don't know what to do.
Is he going to hang Paul Ryan out to dry? It looks like a lot of people are, by the way, going to approach this by hanging Paul Ryan out to dry.
That's okay. Yeah.
It's fine by me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, what McConnell's at here, who knows? Who knows? It's, if he manages to do this, say that Paul Ryan is able to get everybody on board and he gets this through, which I frankly do not see happening. McConnell's not going to be able to. Mike Lee and Rand Paul have already made huge noises about not doing it, not supporting this bill, standing tough with their Freedom Caucus maniac friends and saying, nope, repeal. It's got to be repeal, and then we'll talk about what we're doing. So there's 2 out of the 52. Okay, so you could have Mike Pence come in and be the savior, but the other problem is Planned Parenthood. Because you have Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins saying, no, we can't do anything that defends Planned Parenthood. So there's 4.
That's too many.
That's too many. But on top of that, you've got another 3 who, along with Murkowski, say we cannot support what they're doing to Medicaid.
Oh, really? Okay.
So there's 7. That's too many.
That's a gang in the Senate.
That's a gang. Or is it 8?
Well, you
I'm counting Murkowski twice, so am I at 7 or am I at 8? I think I'm at 8.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we got all the names. So it was Lee and
Paul
Murkowski.
on repeal.
Repeal. And then Murkowski
and Collins on Planned Parenthood.
Okay. 4. I don't know who the others
Murkowski, Portman, Cavuto, and a 4th on Medicaid.
Okay.
So that's 7.
All right.
Okay. Anyway, it's too many.
Yes.
Because even if Joe Manchin decides to go be Joe Manchin, and he can't really with Cavuto, also from West Virginia, who's raising hell on Medicaid, it would look pretty bad of him at home in West Virginia.
Yes.
To not back up his fellow senator.
Yeah. That would be, yeah, that would really be something if she said no and he said yes.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, okay. So, Capito, not,
Cavuto,
right?
Cavuto's
the jerk from
the jerk on,
Fox Business. Or
right.
Whatever. Yeah. No, but, I let that one go too, like, oh yeah, no, yeah. Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm just confusing all my jerks. Yeah, okay. So,
Thank you for that correction, because I would probably go on and do it in posts.
Oh, well, yeah, then we'll catch that. It's easier.
Yes.
Let's see. Any other bits to round up here? I mean, I'm sure that your attention has been almost exclusively on the healthcare stuff.
It has, and there's been so much I haven't been able to cover everything I want to. Like the big tax giveaway they're giving to corporate CEOs, to healthcare CEOs.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Who, by the way, are about 80% opposed to this plan, to repealing without. They want to keep this. So maybe this was the sop to them to try to get them on board, give them their big tax break.
Man, that's just pretty weak. I mean, I'm sure they would love to have more money and everything, but it's not like they're not getting the money either.
They're doing fine.
Yeah.
They're doing fine. So I don't think it's probably going to work. They're opposed to this. The American Medical Association is opposed to it. The Hospital Association is opposed to it. There isn't anybody who likes it.
Oh. That's bad.
It's bad. It's bad.
Although, as I told Greg, no one wanted the sequester either.
No. Sequester.
Yes. I'm sorry I said it correctly. But yeah, that tax provision, I was wondering, I mean, it just seems like such a weak sop even because, and this was, I guess, Obamacare, the bill, the Affordable Care Act, removed the ability of insurance companies to deduct the compensation that they gave to their top execs beyond $500,000
beyond
in
$500,000,
salary,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it's not even really a benefit to the top executives. They're getting the money. It's just that the company can't deduct the money they give them from the corporation's taxes, but now it can. It's not even really. So the CEOs say, I don't know, I've been making $7 million a year anyway. It's just now we'll get a bigger tax break for the corporation, which,
right.
Well, nice, and it's good to put in our annual report and all. That doesn't really affect me. I'm not going to get any more money.
No. And it's not making the insurance companies themselves feel any better about any of this.
No. Okay.
Even because there's still tremendous uncertainty.
Yes.
They hang around for another 2 years, and then what happens? There's some kind of cliff they fall off of. They are not going to get those people with the 30% surcharge. If they do, it's going to be sick people because it's total disincentive for somebody who's healthy to sign up for health insurance.
Right.
If they've had a lapse of 2 months. They're not going to sign up and pay 30% extra on their premiums. They're going to chance staying healthy and not having health insurance because it's the financially responsible thing for them to do in their situation. But then if they get sick, they're going to sign up for health insurance. So that death spiral of all of the sick people signing up and the health people not signing up is actually going to happen. It hasn't been happening, but it could happen. Insurance companies certainly see that. Yeah. They hate this thing, along with everybody else. Yeah,
I imagine that's the way it would go. I mean, the economics tells you that's the way it would go, but in addition, at some level, Obamacare opponents for all those years, I don't know whether it's stuck, but they claim to be training their people, essentially, intentionally don't get health insurance to protest the individual mandate. I don't know if that really convinced anybody. But I don't
think that really worked.
Yeah, I hope
they tried.
If it did, I imagine, like, what would a person who learned that was a good idea do with this? They would also likewise say, to hell with it. I doubt very much whether there's anybody who bought into that argument the first time. And if there's anybody who bought that the first time but who now says, I am now willing to pay the penalty because I'm paying a private company. I feel so much better. My
freedom.
Money, the money isn't gone anymore because I don't know, maybe it'll trickle down to me or something. But I can't imagine anybody would feel any better about paying a 30% surcharge to entity B rather than entity A. Economics says you shouldn't, but who knows? Politics may have convinced you otherwise.
Freedom.
Yeah.
And I'll give up my iPhone, too.
Right. Trade it for insurance. That's the other big thing that was being overlooked, that this bill raises the cost of health insurance from a chicken to an iPhone. And that's a huge increase.
That's a huge increase.
I used to be able to just pay docs with chickens. Now I have to give up an iPhone. This is terrible.
I've seen lots of great stuff out there in the last 24 hours on how many iPhones various kinds of treatment cost, and it's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, that was rather remarkable.
It was rather remarkable and really just does reflect basic GOP thinking.
Yeah.
that they haven't thought about healthcare, that they don't know how it works because they've never had to. They just have it.
Yep.
And B, it's welfare. Health insurance is welfare.
Yes, and any poor people who own things are cheating somehow.
Yes.
If you own something, how are you poor? How did you get the money to have that thing? Okay.
And if you have that thing, you don't deserve health insurance.
Right. And everyone can, sell their used iPhones. It's really easy.
Right.
Oh, well. Anything else we need to squeeze in there or that you haven't been able to write that you would like people to be aware of? In case
there's just so much.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be continuing on that today. It's going to be another Ryan Care, Trump Care. We're not really sure what to call it at this point.
Question.
I think Ryan Care probably, because I imagine Trump's going to abandon it relatively soon. As unpopular as it is.
That will be interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Just because this will appeal to you, the optics yesterday of the little table there by Spicer's podium.
Yes. The papers.
With the 2 stacks of paper.
Right.
How ridiculous was that?
That's pretty bad. And, now did Price also pull a stunt somewhere where
yes.
he had it? And it turned out that too, every time one of these guys puts a stack of paper in front of you, it's exactly that. It's a stack of paper. The thing
yes.
they say it isn't there.
It's not there.
Blank paper.
But the other part is the only reason that the Republican stack was shorter than the Democratic stack was because what the Republican stack was doing was referring back to the big papers.
Oh, yes, right. We're repealing this through this page number,
right.
this, that. Okay, well, so they cheated on that. That's no surprise. But yeah, I saw a lot of people just reflecting on the absurdity of the moment, that they're literally standing there with something that's a sixth, a fifth, whatever the number is of the economy, and saying, but there's less paper in this one, and that's good. That's gooder. It's more bigly better than the other because short is best, which I don't know. I mean, usually people say bigger is better, but in this case, not. It's like scored like golf, I guess.
Easier for tiny hands to grasp.
That was it. This was all we could fit in his hands. And so therefore, policy.
I feel like I'm at the Oscars and we're being played out.
We are. This is what happens when we go too long. But I appreciate your sticking by me with it today and for coming by and not being on strike and using the time to tell everybody else who is on strike how much we support them. How about that?
I hope that
works. Thanks very much, Joan. And I guess time to get back to work, if you will. Or back to fun, as we like to prove it. Okay, thanks, Joan. Joan McCarter, our senior political writer, on her way back out the door and helping us limp through yet another poor explanation from my perspective, or from my mouth, essentially, of what was going on today's Day Without a Woman. My goodness. All right, well, we'll be back tomorrow, probably when the women come back as well, although we won't have any of them with us on the show, but Greg will return. And for now, we turn things over to 2 men over on the after show. What have they got rounded up for your infotainment this morning? 90% of American households lost an average of $17,000 in housing and savings to the plutocrats in 2016. Didn't you feel like things were getting better for you? Well, on average, apparently not. I wonder why.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
How about this one? The GOP-controlled Congress killed an Obama-era rule that gave local communities more input on public land. Everybody hates input from local communities, right? All of that, plus, of course, on the last half, Angela Marks, a.k.a. Angie in Washington State, via Twitter, for a discussion of all the healthcare news. Stay tuned.